Welcome to the Donna Seebo Show. Donna is an international mental practitioner, psychic, award-winning author, counselor, speaker, teacher, and radio television talk show personality. She brings to the airwaves talented people from around the world who share their insights and experiences with you, the listening audience. Now, let's join Donna.
Hello, my goodness. Oh, are you just swamped with activities? This being the holiday season, it just seems like go is the status quo. Donna Seebo here. I'm so delighted that you're joining me. We're going to be talking about a subject that often is brought up. And in media, there are all kinds of commentaries. There's different discussions regarding what subject, you may ask? Bullying. Now, I don't know of any generation that has not been affected by bullying. It seems to be a part of the human experience. Is it fun? No. Is it at times downright ugly? Absolutely. Well, we're going to be discussing this in I would like to say a perspective that if you are a parent and you're concerned about this happening with your child, if you're an adult and you're concerned about how you handle confrontational environments that you just don't know how to respond to, well, join the club of we humans that have experienced bullying big time. We've survived it, and my guest, Kalyani Pardeshi, is a woman that decided she was going to put down her observations, what she learned, in how we can empower ourselves, our children, our friends, to be more true to themselves. Kalyani, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Kalyani, you are a woman that has a very interesting background. You are Asian. You are a woman that actually ended up with your family being in South Africa. Now, something that I think is really misunderstood by a lot of people is that bullying doesn't know gender. It doesn't know culture. It happens literally everywhere, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does indeed. And then, like I say, I moved to South Africa when apartheid was at its peak. So, the bullying wasn't just bullying, it was also racism and isolation. It was all forms of bullying.
And this is something that historically, if you look at history, it seems like this is, for whatever reason, part of what we go through as human beings. I can remember being bullied in school and going home crying and being so upset, and you often have a very difficult time understanding why people will be cruel. And we could go into the psychological implications of that and all that kind of stuff. But your book, Unbullied, I thought was very interesting because you actually decided to share your own personal experiences, the lessons you learned, and the adaptations that you feel you could share with other people so that they could be empowered themselves. Why did you even want to bother with this? I mean, there's so much conversation about it. What was it that made you feel that you needed to tell your story?
So what triggered me is back in 2017, I closed down my successful online fitness business and I walked away from almost 3,000 social media followers in pursuit of understanding what my real purpose in life was. While my business was successful in helping many mothers rediscover their self-confidence through fitness, I felt unfulfilled. Somehow I felt there was a bigger purpose in my life. And my breakthrough came through when I was volunteering at an anti-bullying workshop at my daughter's elementary school. Having experienced bullying at all stages of my life, I decided I wanted to see what tools they had to offer to equip children in this day and age compared to what I was given. And the workshop was very well presented. The focus was on kindness. So be kind, because if you're not kind and if you bully, this is the effect it will have on your victim. All very interesting. And then about a week or 10 days later, what happened is the bullies were at it again. And my daughter came to me and she said to me, "Mommy, what's the point of these workshops if it doesn't stop the bullies from bullying?" And that's when I took a step back and I realized that my whole life, my personality has been formed by what I have faced. And what is my personality can be tools to help kids today, actually tools that can help even adults today. So I felt it was a disservice not to share what I knew, and I was just so passionate about it. I actually wrote the first draft of my book in 19 days.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, this is something I think that's very important because too often people, when they are going through these experiences, they seem to think that they're the only one that's going through this kind of experiences. And you described this very, very well because you, being in South Africa, your family told you because you didn't have the right skin color, which I don't know what that's supposed to be because they're in all shades of gray, brown, and white and whatever. But anyway, isn't it interesting how we make perceptions? You're a certain color, so you just don't fit. To me, that's ignorance personified. However, you were sent to a boarding school. Now, I have never really found that people that were sent to boarding schools were absolutely ecstatic about the experience. And most of the time, it was like, "Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I learned something, but I wouldn't want to repeat it." Now, I'm sure there's somebody listening to say, "Oh, Donna, you just don't know about boarding schools." Well, I've had conversations with people through the years. But you really had a cultural shock when you went to the boarding school. Why was it so important that you be sent to a boarding school? Were there not public schools available in South Africa where you were?
There were public schools available, but everything was segregated based on your race. So my parents decided to send me away to a different country, which was not part of, was not under apartheid rule, where I could actually get an education which was not defined by my skin color, by my race. I am Asian, and therefore I would have opportunities at my disposal, which I wouldn't normally have had if I lived in South Africa. And being Asian, education comes first. It's all about education. It's not about, what mental health and, what makes you happy. It's like you're not going to get anywhere in life unless if you have at least an undergraduate degree or at least of this. It was education and opportunity. We're talking about sporting opportunities, even scholarship opportunities as well.
Yes, and that I think that still holds true. I don't see that having changed very much, and that's not a bad thing because you do need education. However, when you were sent to the school and you had a very strong family unit at home, and you describe how it is when you are put into a boarding school environment. You have those students that have been there before you, and there's always a hierarchy within a school. I don't care what anybody says. There's always those that are, quote unquote, the leaders, whether it is of the negative group or the positive group. There's always those people in positioning. And when you got there, they started calling you names, and of course you didn't know what they meant. And finally someone told you. What was that effect like on you?
It was a shock. It was an absolute shock because I grew up where in a home where it was okay for me to just be me. I didn't have to be anything or anyone in order to be loved and accepted. So suddenly I was being called names because of the way I dressed, and I do talk about this in my book. My parents weren't very rich, so they did buy me clothes that were 2 to 3 sizes bigger so that I wouldn't outgrow them too quickly. I mean, I understand the reasoning behind it, and I respected and loved them so much that I wasn't going to say to them, well, buy me XYZ because I'm being called names. It was such a shock because my parents always said to me, you have to treat other people the way you want to be treated. And I could not understand what joy or what kick people got out of calling me names that insinuated I was a nun because my dresses were very long and they came probably around mid-calf length. And I was picked on because of what I wore, which I really had no control over. I wore what I was given. It wasn't a school that had uniforms. I think it would have been different if they had uniforms.
Probably. I really liked what you brought out in the very beginning of your book, because you talk about this and how you were made fun of. But you gave an exercise in the book that I think even adults could use, and that is to start journaling. Now, this is something that is promoted very frequently. I know whenever I do classes, I encourage people to journal, because that is something that is very, very special. And it allows you, especially if you're a young person, but also if you're an adult, to sort of calm that emotional brain side of yourself and make you think. And I really like this exercise about reprogramming your brain. Now, that may sound a little sophisticated, but someone that has kids, if they read that and think about it, if you can change your child's attitude and awareness that they are not a victim here in the real sense, they can do something to stand up to what's going on, but they have to think about it. So this is a process of, again, reprogramming the brain. Give that exercise. That's a very good one.
Well, thank you very much. I like you very much, because I found when I write things down, it connects. There's a connection between, literally, some sort of an electrical connection between, your pen, the paper, and your brain. When you're sitting and thinking, it's like a hamster on a wheel. It's just going nonstop. But when you sit down and you write down what's really going on, it gives you a chance to introspect and to understand that you actually do have the power to change things. What you say to yourself becomes your inner voice. And that's why I say when you reprogram your brain, you are not what your beliefs call you. You are who you choose to be. It's always a choice. One thing I always teach my children, I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, is like you always have a choice. If I just may give a super quick example here.
Sure.
My daughter was at a birthday party yesterday and unknowingly consumed chocolate that had hazelnut in it. And it was unfortunately an error on the part of the host, who knew she's allergic to nuts, but she was rushed to emergency. She was very well taken care of. My husband was there. He met them at the hospital. And I had a choice. I had a choice in that situation to be angry with the host, or I had a choice to be grateful. And I chose to be grateful because, number one, she got her to emergency right on time. Number two, she carried with her the candy that my daughter ate to show the doctor exactly what she ate and how much she ate. Number three, on the drive to the hospital, she was telling my daughter stories the whole time to keep her mind off her allergic reaction. So it's the same thing, is that you have a choice. And we forget that. When we're being bullied, we forget that we have a choice, that what we have to say matters. And we just have to put our words together by writing them down in such a way that we can, first of all, convince ourselves and then convince the people that we are reaching out to for help.
You bring out multiple times how when you were in the school, if you told about certain things that were going on, the instructors or the people would say, well, that's just kids being kids. And you, at one point, witnessed a girl literally being slapped around by the other girls. And apparently this girl there'd been a pillow fight, something that was going on, and this particular individual that had bullied you and continued to bully you while you were at the school really went in big time with this person, and you were witnessing it, and you made a comment. You said, I did not. I saw it, but I didn't say anything to anyone. You basically had learned, because of the attitude of the adults, that whatever you would say or complain about wasn't going to have any value. You weren't going to be listened to. What did you learn from that particular event?
When I saw that whole incident, I think I internalized one very simple lesson from that, is this was a perfect opportunity to get my bully beaten up, because the person that was beating up the bully was going around the dorm room saying, I want you to be scared of this person, and the person would say their name. I want you to be scared of that person, I want you to say your name. I was standing there and I didn't say my name. So that lesson taught me that two wrongs don't make a right. Just because this person bullied me doesn't mean, if I could spare her that one extra slap, I was going to spare her that one extra slap by not saying my name. And I walked away from there. At the end of the day, it's up to us to show a little bit of compassion. We talk about forgiveness, and I think it's so important to understand what forgiveness is. It's not about absolution. You're not letting the other person off the hook when you forgive them. You're letting yourself off the hook. You are stopping yourself from feeling all that anger, all that hurt, and all that frustration that's preventing you from moving on in your life. So that lesson taught me one thing is I had the perfect opportunity, but two wrongs don't make a right, so I was not going to get involved. I just walked away, and I wanted that fight to die down by itself, and I literally just went back to bed.
Locked and loaded. This is a technique that you like to teach to young people because you say if you are prepared, you're going to know what to do. And I agree with that. I think that many times our own ignorance actually hinders us, but there's no one in life that's not going to have experiences of realizing how really ignorant they are about what they can do and how they can do it. And that's why I think reading books and having open conversation like we're having is so important. What is the locked and loaded technique?
Okay, so locked and loaded is, I believe that was one incident where I was beaten up, and I spoke about being cornered. And I was beaten up because I called out a specific bully we were playing a game of netball, I believe it was, and this particular bully, the rule was, because we were teenagers learning how to swear, and the rule was very simple, that you're not allowed to swear. So she happened to swear, and I overheard it, and I called her out on it, and I said, you swore. And she then cornered me after school, and she beat me up purely because I spoke the truth. So the locked and loaded is about being prepared. You know what, I always say, prevention is way better than cure. It's better to know your plan of action before the actual incident happens. There's this expression in my language that don't go and dig a water well when you're thirsty. You prepare ahead of time. So what I did is I wrote down things that if you feel physically threatened in any way, where you feel that you will be assaulted, then you make plans ahead of time. You talk to your friends, you talk to your teachers, whoever you need to ensure that you're never alone with this bully. Ask your friends to stay with you. I did not have friends. I unfortunately did not have friends. And if you find yourself alone with the bully like I did, I never expected her to assault me because I hadn't seen her do this to anyone else. Avoid confrontation. Don't take it on your ego. You see, the reason most of these things happen is because we want to stand up for ourselves and defend ourselves. There's nothing wrong with it. But remember one thing, when you're trying to defend yourself against the bully, they don't care what you say. They just care about getting a reaction from you. But if you don't give them that reaction, then you are safe. Your safety comes first. Swallow your pride, swallow your ego, focus on your safety. There's no need to defend yourself. They're not interested in what you have to say in your defense. So I know schools these days do have CCTV cameras in case you're caught in that situation. Cell phones, people make videos. There's always evidence. There was no evidence of what happened to me other than people who were standing by watching this whole physical assault go on. And obviously no one was going to come forward and say, yes, this is what happened. So you have these choices and options and things today. Number one is avoid confrontation at all costs. Trust me, it's not worth defending yourself. They're not interested in what you have to say in your defense. They're really not interested. They just want to get a reaction from you. If you don't give them that reaction, you can walk away with your integrity and your peace intact. And then if it gets down to that, there's CCTV cameras, videos. If you have a phone, make a video of what's going on because you need the proof. And remember, you can take it to the police. This is actually a crime, and you can take it to the police. I did not know all of this when I was 12 years old, but now that I do, in hindsight, if nothing else, I could have told the teachers, if you don't do something about it, because nothing happened to her. She just had to apologize to me. And I think in this day and age, they would be suspended. But had I actually said at that time to the teacher that, this is what happened, I want a suspension. If you don't, make her go away from the school, then I will report this to the police. Like I say, the teachers were always so tired of me complaining that I felt helpless. I felt like I didn't have a voice. And over the years, I've learned how to make my voice be heard, and that's why I've written all of this down.
Well, I think, too, something that we have to be aware of is there's no straight line in life, and all of us are going to have our challenges. Being aware that we can stand up to those challenges is very important, and also knowing when to walk away, because most of the time, the people that are the bullies, there is something that's behind it, and they are wanting to exhibit a control that they may not have in any other aspect of their life. And often there will be that opportunity to be able to stand them down. And you bring out one aspect that I think is very true, and that is to be aware, to not be intimidated. But when they threaten you, like you were threatened in a particular incident about how you had an encounter with a family member who was a bully, and he really made some very, very negative remarks to the tune of, I don't care about you, I don't want to see your face. And I loved your response because you said, that's awesome, thanks for letting me know. He didn't know what to do with that. Because he deliberately, this is something that people will deliberately do. And I've said to audiences, I said, if anybody ever calls you a Neanderthal, say thank you. I couldn't have had a nicer compliment. Because they obviously don't know about the Neanderthals. And you're one up on them. And they're just not going to know where to go from there.
Exactly.
This is something that's important. And this is something that I think children... Now, when they're real small, it's hard, but as they get older, especially when they get into their teen years, this gives them some ammunition to work with.
Again, like I say, it's always about the ego. It's always about the ego. I remember my husband told me the story a while back. I don't know who wrote it. I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently it's about Winston Churchill, and he was coming up to this narrow bridge, and he was walking with his nemesis, and the nemesis said to him, well, I don't let losers walk ahead of me. And Winston Churchill turned around and said, but I do, so please lead the way. And that's what it is. It is the fact that the bullies want to get a reaction out of you. And the minute you say, no, stop that, that's not a nice thing to say. Well, no, that's horrible. The same family bully I mentioned in the book a couple of years later, he took another blow at me saying, because it's always about how I raise my kids, and and saying that I pretty much don't know anything about my culture, etc., and I don't do this right and I don't do that right. And I just said to him, fine, I don't. How is it the end of the world? I don't know this. But you don't know anything. Fine, I don't know anything. Is there anything else you want to add to that? At the end of the day, you're not accepting what they say, but you're diffusing the situation, because it leaves them speechless, and that is where your power is. When you disempower them, that's what makes you powerful. The minute you make it an ego war, you lose, because in a war of an ego, the loser always wins. So let it go. Don't take it on your ego, and just realize that this person's not listening to understand. This person's listening to argue back with you.
It took you a while to know how to speak out for yourself. And you go into a number of different stories, and I love the animated cartoons that are in the book. I think the person that put them together did a wonderful, wonderful job. But one of the lessons that you did learn is that you had to be selective about who you talk to. And that, I think, is, for anyone, a very difficult thing to realize, is that you can say the truth and you can speak up, or you can be very open with your feelings. You talk about it in a way of wearing your heart on your sleeve. And it doesn't serve you well. You need to be discerning. You need to be discriminating about who it is you tell your stuff to. And that is something everybody has to learn, don't they?
Yes, they do. One of the things I teach my children, because they're still too young to understand instincts, my daughter does, not my son, is that how does it make you feel? You will automatically feel comfortable with a person or you will not. And that's pretty much your instinct, your intuition telling you, it gives you that uncomfortable feeling like, I can't say whatever I want to this person, or I can say whatever I want to this person. At the end of the day, if we don't listen to those feelings, we're doing them a disservice, and we're doing ourselves a disservice, because it's in an ideal world. Yes, it's perfect to trust everybody, but you get to this point where you realize, okay, these people I can say the truth to. These people I need to be very careful what I say to. And even the people that you're very, very honest and open with, some things you can't talk about. I have a very, very good friend whom I discuss everything with, but we can't talk about vaccinations because she doesn't believe in vaccinations. I do. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be really picky and choosy. And when we're picky and choosy, the most important thing is to take note of how you feel around people. If you get butterflies, if you feel nervous, then you know, okay, I need to be wary of this person. If you feel super comfortable and you feel energized, then okay, I can talk to this person.
There are aspects that you also bring out in Unbullied about dealing with family. And I don't know of anyone that hasn't had, when they're growing up, their differences with their parents or with family members. This just is a part of the expression of life. And one of the things that you finally did is that you let your father know that you needed to be out of this boarding school. And that was a real big bone of contention between your parents for a good deal of time, wasn't it? Because your brother was in a school and there was nothing that went on there, but he never talked about his experiences, and he didn't tell you what it was like for him in the school. Everybody responds differently, and he just sort of sucked it up. You didn't.
It's very interesting you say that, because the truth is, and I think that now, like, my relationship with my parents is completely different. I do talk to them very openly about what's going on. But as a child, I was not one that, dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's. I was the rebel. I was the troubled child, in the sense that I was the fussy eater. I did not like dressing up. Being a girl, I was just not the girly girl, pigtails and cute dresses. I was not that girl. I was a tomboy. I was rough. I got into trouble with my teachers. Even once as a little child, I skipped school because I just did not like school. I was a trouble child, while my brother was always the goody two-shoes. So for me to have been heard where they say, well, she's just, she's the problem child, she's just whining because she's the one that cries wolf too many times. It finally got to this point where I just said, I can't do this anymore. I need you to listen to me. So I know my mom harbored a lot of resentment towards me because my brother didn't take the same decision as I did. I'm not saying he wasn't bullied. I'm quite sure he was. But maybe he could handle it and I couldn't. I am very strong. I feel very strongly about things that are just not right, and I will not tolerate it. I do talk about it in the book, is that back then bullying was considered as bonding and building camaraderie and stuff like that. I didn't believe that. I believe there was a better way of doing things like that. Building camaraderie. There had to be a better way. You can't go around bullying people to do that, to achieve that. So I've always spoken what I felt, and I've not been liked. Even to this day, as an adult, I still speak what I feel, and I'm not liked for it. But the difference is now I don't really care. I'm not going to sugarcoat who I am. I'm not going to change who I am because I've worked very hard to be this person. And if something doesn't sit well with me, I'm not going to shut up about it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think the exercises you give in the book, parents could sit down with their children and could go through these together. I really think there's a lot of adults in reading with it because adults go through bullying situations at the workplace or even within their own families, and maybe they've never looked at a way that empowers them to be able to stand true and strong to who they really are. Your book, Unbullied 14 Techniques to Silence the Critics Externally and Internally, is very nicely done. And you have a Facebook page. There's a website that's in development, but your Facebook page is your first name, Kalyani Speaks. Kalyani is spelled Kalyani, and your last name is Pardeshi, and that's Pardeshi. Your material is very good, and I wish you continued success with it, and I thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much, Donna. I had fun chatting with you.
It's been a joy. Donna Seebo here, and check out Kalani's Facebook page, Kalani Speaks.